But thank you everybody for joining the Accenture event here today. Accenture's event is titled the Accenture's Design Thinking Workshop, or the Thought Process of a Consultant. Our panelists and volunteers today are going to be Anna Schilling, Lydia Herbst, and Anne Pacholowski. And Shinopa Mogobogobo will be joining us a little bit later as one of the breakout rooms as well. So I'll let Anna, Lydia, and Anne take it away from here. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Let's see. So thank you all for joining. We're excited to have you guys. So a little bit about what we're going to touch on today, very design thinking focused. But let's see. So Ben, do you want to cover the first two slides, or do you want us to go ahead and jump on in?
You can just jump right in. Just as a quick reminder too, if there's any questions in the chat, whether that's in Zoom or on Whova, I will be monitoring those throughout the rest of the event. So please feel free to participate. We don't want to just be talking at everybody for the next 30 minutes or so.
Yep, absolutely. And then likewise, because I'm screen sharing, I don't have a view of what's being shared. So please feel free to interrupt me if things are going on in the background. All right. So today we'd like to go ahead and cover Accenture's Design Thinking Workshop Fundamentals. So we're excited to share this topic with you because it really is ingrained in the everyday of what consultants at Accenture do. It's something that I practice with my clients on a daily basis, whether it's in a workshop form or even just, behind the scenes. So hopefully we can answer some of your questions, just in general answer like what is design thinking, and then give you guys some methods and tools that will bring you guys to success. Let's see. Anne, do you want to cover the slide?
Sure. Yep. So our agenda for this session, we'll start off with just a quick introduction to Accenture, and then we'll jump into what is design thinking. And then we'll have the breakout rooms where we'll do a little more hands-on activity on design thinking, and then reflection and Q&A at the end.
All right, sounds good. So just giving an overview of who we are. So again, my name is Anna Schilling. So I've been at Accenture for about 4 years. So I came straight out of undergrad in my master's program with IU. At Indiana University, in my undergrad, I focused on international business, tech management, and marketing. So I had a broad business background. And then in my master's program, I was with the MSIS program, and I focused on business analytics. So married that, foundational business background with more tech-focused work. So excited to be here. And since I've been at Accenture, I've focused on a variety of different clients across different industries, everything from security and retail clients to now working in insurance. So got some fun experience there. Lydia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. I am Lydia. I graduated from IU alongside Anne in 2020. So I've been here at Accenture for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years in August. And I majored in information systems. So I've been on mostly security projects since joining, and really have enjoyed all of it. I will pass it off to Anne now.
Yep, thanks, Lydia, class of 2020. Yeah, so I also graduated from IU, majoring in information systems with a co-major in international business and minor in Spanish. And then I've been with Accenture for about 1.5 years, going on 2 years in August. And I am based out of Chicago. And since my time at Accenture, I've been on a few different projects, mainly data transformation, data and analytics for a large fast food company. So that's been super cool, but same client the whole time, basically.
Very cool. Thank you, Anne. And then, so we have Shinopa, who wasn't able to make the start of the call, unless you've joined since. All right, so I know that Shinopa is also an IU grad, so you have a panel of entirely IU women here. So whenever she joins later, she can give her her background. But nonetheless, we're excited to be here today with you guys. Okay, let's see, diving right in. So again, Accenture is a huge company. We have over 600,000 people now on a global scale. So that means that with that many people, we're touching pretty much everything and anything. So whether that is, the cup right in front of you, the computer that you're working on, or, the car that you're driving, we have, I think it's like over 90% of the Fortune 500 companies are our clients and have been our clients for several years. And as a result, we've been able to develop our skill set to specialize in all of those different areas, and not just those different industries themselves, but also in the skills that they require. So whenever you see this paragraph of here of we combine unmatched experience and specialized capabilities in more than 40 industries, that means that, like I mentioned, we're in automotive, we're in utilities, we're in retail, we're in finance. You can catch us on healthcare and public services. If you interact with it, we're probably touching it. Again, we are multinational. We're over 120 different countries. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we are probably consulting there. So that's an incredibly exciting part to our, community to be a part of, because that means if there is, work going on somewhere in the world, you can get in touch with somebody at Accenture who's probably doing it. So for example, I'm really excited about the responsible AI space. So how can you make sure that the machine learning models that are being built today to decide everything from who gets hired at which company to, what movies are recommended on Netflix, that is being built in a fair and responsible way. And I'm able to connect with people in Ireland, Germany, Australia, Italy, and people here in the United States, as well as just anybody who's in my backyard here in Chicago. So it's an exciting space to be a part of. Just curious, any questions so far? All right, in which case then, Anne, are you covering the slide?
Yes. Yeah. So
awesome. Cool.
Just going into a little bit more detail. Thanks, Anna. So Accenture is split up into these 4 service lines. So strategy and consulting, interactive, technology, and operations. Basically, I would say in general, Accenture is very technology and innovation heavy. So across all of the service lines, you're going to be working with technologies, solving problems using technology across every service line. But strategy and consulting is kind of your most traditional, like strategy management consulting with a focus on business technology strategy, also industry or more functional focuses. Interactive is very innovative. This one's actually very interesting to me. Very focused on growth, product, and culture design. It's very creative, marketing heavy strategy for marketing and branding using interactive technologies, which is cool. Next is technology, which is the service line that I'm part of. So within technology, this is focused on application services, intelligent platforms, cloud, and AI, data, security, very tech heavy. And then operations is more business process focused. So function specific, finance, accounting, those type of services, and then also industry specific things as well. So yeah, there's a lot that we do.
Yeah, and we know that this isn't necessarily in line with all of the other consulting firms that are out on the industry that are out in the world right now. So if you guys have any questions about what it means to have all of these different offerings, or just are curious about the offering in particular, feel free to drop that question in the chat too. We're happy to help answer those to the best of our ability. Mm-hmm. All right.
Awesome. Yeah, and as Anna mentioned earlier, we really do have experts in all of these industries across all of these groups, because we do almost have 700,000 people working here at Accenture. So like she said, we really are touching everything and anything. And yeah, so it really ranges from aerospace and defense to retail to insurance. Really, we kind of cover it all.
Okay, and then going into some more detail on a typical day in the life. So yeah, the morning, I feel like for me and my personal experience, mornings are super hectic, usually filled with checking email on things that happened, maybe outside of my working hours or outside of my time zone. So getting caught up on emails, checking messages, meeting with our development team, getting caught up on the work that they've been doing. So that's pretty much in the morning. And then later morning or afternoon is when we'll have client meetings, we'll collaborate and kind of work through if there's any open issues or challenges that we're having, but a lot of meetings then and collaboration. In the evening, yeah, this is our time. I would say for me, my typical evening routine is getting a workout in, making dinner, and then if there's any type of events or networking or, after work hours, work activities, that's in the evening times. But yeah, and then the little call outside on the right hand, the differences between consulting and technology here, it looks like consulting, you're focused on developing process flows, managing statuses and reporting, stakeholder engagement. And then technology, I feel like also does that, but you're developing test cases, designing process flows of more of like a technical solution, and always gathering requirements from the client.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd say that's pretty reflective of most people's days. So I appreciate that you still managed to get a workout in. I know I'm not that consistent.
I mean, I can't say every day, but I try.
No, all good, all good.
Mm-hmm.
So just so that we jump into the topic of the workshop, just curious, who has any experience with design thinking, or who knows what design thinking is? I'll let you guys answer and then I'll hand it over to Lydia.
Hey, Anna, before we get into design thinking, do we have any questions, Ben, in the chat or Huva regarding Accenture or life as a consultant?
Looks like right now there's no questions in the chat or on the Huva chat either. Again, feel free to post questions there or come off of mute. I promise none of us on this panel bite. We welcome the engagement. And honestly, the design thinking portion here is going to be super interesting, and so will the interactive part in the breakout rooms a little later.
Anyone have anything on design thinking?
It's okay if you get the answer wrong, right? That's part of the reason why we have this, so that we can learn together.
Somebody posted in the chat that design thinking is following a user-centered approach to solving problems.
Yeah, I would say that's a really great explanation of design thinking. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So when I think of design thinking, I really think of it as kind of a way for businesses to design for change with the users kind of at the forefront of their thinking. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see here that it says that it really means thinking of from a design perspective. So what does that really mean, right? And when I think of it, I think of solving the problem really by understanding and empathizing with the users. What do they need to make them successful with the solution that we're coming up with? And when we continue to learn that and continue to collaborate with them and iterate and evolve our solution, then we really are able to create a solution that's innovative, but also that the users really enjoy using. And I think Anna will be able to really discuss how we approach design thinking kind of by a step-by-step basis.
So whoever wrote in the chat, their answer, good job. And if you guys have more questions on, what Lydia just presented, feel free to write that into the chat too as we go forward. All right, so jumping in here to the next slide. So actually taking a quick step back. let me ask you guys a question. Whenever you guys are solving a problem, what's the process that you guys normally follow? Do you guys immediately start jumping in and solutioning and building out what you think is the right approach? Or do you tend to step back and kind of maybe like sketch out some ideas on like a thinking pad before you get started? Just type in like option 1 or option 2 into the chat. So option 1 is when you just start jumping in and start creating, and option 2 is more like start brainstorming and writing things out on a ThinkPad.
Looks like a lot of option 2s are coming through on the chat, maybe 1 or 2 option 1s.
Okay. All right. Well, so at least on that point, like there is no really wrong way to get started. Design thinking is a blend of both of those options. So whenever we start trying to solve a problem with design thinking, we go through a casing approach. And that's, again, a mix of option 1 and option 2, where we're, digging in and getting our hands dirty, but we're also stepping back and trying to frame and reframe the problem. So we typically go through these, 4 steps. So the first one being is, we take the time to really understand our client. So before we even start trying to solve the solution, we're just trying to sit back and understand, like, okay, why might we be solving the problem, and who are we solving this problem for? In this middle section, that's really where we're trying to vet out whether the solution is the right one. So we haven't really created the solution yet, but we're starting to draw together all of those like brainstorming ideas to see what might make a viable solution. And then in this last step, in iterating on your solution, that's really where we're starting to build the solution to see if what we think might be the right approach truly is. So walking a little bit more in depth, right? So that's how option 1 and option 2 really come together. Whenever we start understanding the client, that's all about just researching and understanding the client's value proposition, because you realize that every client or every business as on the whole serves a different purpose, right? Like Uber Eats serves a different purpose than Lyft, and Lyft serves a totally different purpose than, like a taxi cab. And so whenever you're designing solutions for each 3 of those options, you need to make sure that you're understanding the value proposition that client truly intrinsically brings. And while all of those items that I mentioned were in the transportation industry, you need to make sure that you understand and identify the trends that are influencing each one of those companies, right? So you can't just make a one approach fits all type of methodology with design thinking. And that's where, again, that human-centered design and purpose design comes into focus. Again, whenever you're reaching that middle phase of starting to kind of like draw out the items that might go into your solution, what you really have to do is find a good question to solve, right? Because what's the point of having a solution if nothing's broken? So at least in that point, what I always like to do and define the problem phase is I like to sit down with my clients and just give them all sticky notes to say, like, all right, what do you think is wrong? And just hear everybody's perspective, because everybody is going to say something different. HR is going to have one point of view, marketing is going to say something totally else, and finance is going to come in and say, you know what, everybody else's problems don't matter, it's all about the budget, right? So it's nice to get different stakeholders in the room to understand. It's like, okay, you know what, this is truly a market sizing problem, so let's go forward and answer questions about that. Or like, no, it's a profitability question. So defining what that problem is and then moving forward. So what we like to do in this step is, reviewing the client's perspectives and understandings of their current situations. And then we like to sit down and have some more detailed interviews so that we can explore the kind of the cause and effects of like what they think is happening, why they think it's happening. And then again, going back into our own research that is a little less biased, we can help consider that against the stakeholders and their wants and needs. So in step 2, now that we've done all of that due diligence of our own market research and then defining the problem, we can actually start saying like, okay, we have a general idea of what's wrong. We have a general idea of what, could, be the true problem. So now we can start iterating and innovating on a solution. So what we like to do is really take a nothing is wrong approach. And so whenever we sit down, again, design thinking is centered on Sharpies and sticky notes. We like to get everybody in a room, give them all colorful sticky notes, give them Sharpies and say, you know what? Art of the possible, right? Like, yes, everything is impossible. You can always find a reason to say no, but like, what would an ideal solution look like to you? And just let everybody write down what in an ideal world would help solve some of the key questions and problems that we defined. So with that, then we have actually a variety of different programs and tools and frameworks that we can use to help ideate on some of those solutions. And we also have a good number of frameworks and activities that will help refine some of those solutions, so that when we go through the ideation phase and we say no answer is a wrong answer, eventually we can get to the ideation and refinement phase where you're like, okay, now there might be some wrong solutions. Let's try to identify, what really centers on the client's value proposition. So we bring some of our tools and methodologies there. And then once we get to a point where we think our ideas are refined enough, we try to start clustering some of the ideas in their themes. So that's whenever we say like affinitize them, we're really trying to decide, it's like, okay, well, marketing said this, finance said this, operations said this, and they all kind of follow the same theme. So let's put those ideas together. And then likewise, whenever you're solutioning, you can't just implement everything. Like finance says, you don't have an endless budget. You have to pick one or two things to go forward. So at least on that end, we try to make sure that we can democratically pick the solution within the organization that's going to be the best. And we prioritize it through different prioritization matrices and then other, other frameworks. So we try to get to that stage. Once we get to stage 3 and we try to start communicating the proposed solution, we really work on a storyboard so that we can articulate why our solution has a purpose, right? Because again, design thinking is human-centered design that is purpose-driven. We don't want to just solution for the sake of solutioning. So we walk through storyboarding. And if you guys aren't familiar with that, it's really just trying to write out end to end, why that solution would be leveraged by like your end consumer or by the business, so that you can show how your solution addresses the problem statement that you guys have collectively defined in that phase 1. And so then lastly, whenever you're trying to communicate that proposed solution, what better way to articulate that than by showing, right? So showing a picture is always worth 1,000 words. So whether you're showing a rough sketch or whether you're showing a working prototype, you can really bring that solution to life. And of course, Agile is usually a part of the design thinking process, which means you're always working on the most minimally viable product. Once you get to stage 4, that's whenever you're trying to understand how your solution can best scale. So you're building upon the initial proposal, you're incorporating additional feedback that you might have gotten from the stakeholders throughout the process, and you're constantly improving the product that you built so that you can keep incorporating new features that might make your solution even better. But lastly, you're always checking in and doing that monitoring and maintaining part so that you can ask questions of your clients to make sure that the solution that you built is still the right and relevant one, so that you're not just building a solution to have no end, but you're building a solution that again is purpose-driven and design-centric. Okay, I know that I went into depth on each one of those, but I think it's an important point to look at, because really whenever you have design thinking, it breaks down into these key steps. And whenever you're trying to approach a case and solve a problem, if you don't have these steps, you're missing a critical part. So at least on that, are there any questions on those 4 kind of 5 phases? You guys must be design thinking pros. This doesn't even sway you guys. And Anne and Lydia, please feel free to jump in if I missed any context that you guys wanted to cover in any one of these.
No, I think you did a great job covering it. And I think I liked it, especially at the end, how you said, if you're missing one of these steps, you really are missing a piece to the puzzle. And if you try to jump to the end too soon, you're not gonna come out with the best solution.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's see
Cool.
here.
So then now we can go into, this is just a little bit more detail on how to use design thinking on the next slide. Yep. So basically, Anna, you totally covered this, but this is just a different view. And if you look at the bottom, it's split up into, so the steps are kind of split up into those 3 different categories of whether you're looking for information, whether you're understanding, I would say, the information or the situation. And then lastly, making or creating the solution. Oh, it looks like there is a question in the chat. So yeah, so basically you can see across the steps, there's the red looking text. So basically across each of the steps, you're always looking for information, or you're always looking to see what the requirements are. Critique is in steps 2 and 3. So you're always looking in more detail or in a finer lens to try to refine your solution. The green understanding, I think of this as really like synthesizing the information that you gathered from maybe the looking phase. So you're really trying to make sense and put the puzzle pieces together and understand, the different challenges either that the client's facing, the different stakeholders, what the different use cases are, and really trying to make sense of what the situation is. And then towards the end, you can see those making steps. So this is where you're physically putting what you've gathered together and trying to come up with the solution. So this is a concept poster, matrices, prototyping, storyboarding is huge. So, you're really putting pen to paper, or, you're using a digital tool, you're creating something visually to start coming up with that solution. And then at the end, when you're iterating on your solution, prototyping still, you're always critiquing, interviewing, and basically just, iterating on what you've come up with.
The question in the chat, kind of leading off of that with the storyboarding and prototyping, but what are some of your favorite tools to storyboard and create visual prototypes for your clients? So I'm assuming the question is asking, what technologies do you guys like using to achieve this part of the process?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. I don't have anything super fancy. I'm a big PowerPoint girl. I feel like when somebody wants something to be created, my first thought is either PowerPoint or Excel. And maybe that's just because IU and Kelly prepared me so well with those tools, but that's always like my go-to thought. And then I also really like Visio when I'm diagramming or putting together some type of process flow or some type of visual map. I like Visio for that, where there's multiple steps in a process that makes sense in my mind. But sometimes if it's something either more complicated or more visual, PowerPoint, I'm always going to create. I don't know, Anna and Lydia, if you guys have anything else.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you. I use those 3 probably the most out of everything. How about you, Anna?
Yep. Yeah. I use PowerPoint a ton. It's always like, just right in your toolbar at the bottom of your screen. So it's always very easy to navigate to. Whenever I'm hosting broader workshops with, my clients on the whole, there's a great tool called Mural. So it's an interactive software that allows everybody to be on a single whiteboard at the same time and literally using sticky notes. So it brings back more of the in-person type of workshop feeling. But at the end of the day, I mean, just like Anne and Lydia said, design thinking is all about just having Sharpies and sticky notes. So any tool that allows you to write down ideas and move them around in a, co-collaborative way is the right tool. So there's no wrong tool to use. Yeah, good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If anybody else has any fun tools that they want to drop in the chat, always looking for suggestions for new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now tell us what the consulting workshop is using nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, so since we have a little bit of time before we jump into our next event, and Ben, keep me honest on track here. I want to go into detail about what some of these different tools and techniques are in regards to looking, understanding, and making, just because these tools are, again, really powerful. So you'll hear persona profile and journey mapping a lot, as well as kind of round robin. So, and importance and difficulty matrix. These are some of the core tools that allow you to start in the refining process, as well as, getting into like the problem definition. So, and this is a great question to you guys too. If you guys, think you know what they are, drop what you think those items are in the chat, and we can help try to demystify some of that. And then later too, if you guys want a more detailed worksheet on each one of these, we can also send that out after the call. So I'll give you guys just a second there, but I'll jump into persona profile. So like in the name, right, if you're creating a profile for a particular person. So that means that whenever I'm talking to like the head of HR, I'm not just taking her, name and saying, she's the head of HR, that's the end of it. You're really developing like who that person is, like what motivates them, like what thoughts are probably going through their head, what's their background, who, like, you're trying to map on paper who they are as a person, not just who they are as a title. And so that's always a really fun experience, because then whenever you're trying to create your human-centered design, you actually have a human that you're designing for. So in the case of like a user interface, if you're trying to figure out the best way to modify a website for the individuals who are going to be using it, you can say like, okay, I know that my target demographic for this website is going to be, I don't know, 40-year-old moms. So in the persona profile experience, you might create a persona that is, this is Katie, she's a soccer mom. She has 2 kids. She has, very little time to do things during the day for herself. And she needs a website design that's quick, easy, sleek, and easily understandable with big buttons, because she has, her phone enhancement, like magnifying on, right? So that might be your persona profile. And then you go and you create several of those throughout your experience. And then whenever you're innovating on a solution, you can, regularly go back to that persona that you built to Katie and say like, would Katie like this? And you just can use her as a reference instead of trying to, as like a group, say, yes or no, because, there might not be a representative Katie in the room designing that. So that's a helpful tool on that front. Have you guys heard of an importance or difficulty matrix? You have a quick thumbs up in the chat if yes, or a thumbs down if no. Don't worry, again, we don't bite. I know all 3 of us look very mean. I know Ben looks like the only nice one, but. All right, so here I have it. So yeah, I mean, the importance difficulty matrix is a great tool to start in that refinement process of like, what is a good idea? Because again, like we mentioned, whenever you're going through the phases of trying to just ideate, like you're letting people write down whatever they want on a sticky note. And so if they're creating the wish list solution that solves every problem ever, that's probably going to be really difficult to solve. But if people are writing down smaller ideas that might be a little bit more accomplishable, those are probably more likely solutions that are going to be viable. So one of the tools that we use is an importance difficulty matrix to kind of highlight and sift out those ideas against the client's value proposition and against the question. So on, if you imagine an XY axis, you have importance on one side of the axis, you have difficulty on the other side of the axis, and then you essentially plot the ideas of where they would fall on that grid. So you very quickly fall into, 4 quadrants of, these are probably the easiest, highest ROI ideas because they're easy to implement and they're really important. And then likely, you'll find on the other end of the diagram or the grid, a sticky note that falls as like super difficult to implement and not really that important. And so that's an easy way to say like, let's not implement that solution. So that's a fun visual way to go about it. But yeah, Anne and Lydia, do you guys have any one of these that you're particularly passionate about using in your day-to-day?
I'm a pretty visual person, so I feel like the storyboarding I like the most, but yeah, no, you covered that. The persona profile I actually had never heard before, but that makes so much sense. We're always trying to understand, from other stakeholders' point of view, who the users are, but I've never heard that term. So I'll have to integrate that in my day to day.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even we're learning today.
Yeah. And I mean, guys, like that's the fun part about, design thinking. Like there are methods and tools, but it's a constantly evolving practice. And there are always, new things and new ways that you can get engaged with design thinking. So you're always learning, which is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, does anybody have any questions on these? I feel like you guys have been a quiet bunch. Or Ben, is there anything else that you think would be helpful for us to cover?
You guys are the experts on this front.
No worries.
So I don't think so, but I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
We'll give it a couple minutes. I know we are slightly ahead of schedule here before we head into our breakout rooms. Again, to all of the participants here on the call, feel free to come off of mute or post in the chat if you don't feel comfortable coming off of mute, and we'll answer the questions as they come in.
Yep. And actually, so Ben, if you would like, I can show and share a more detailed view of the looking, understanding, and making so that we can go into more depth about that.
Sure. I think we have a couple minutes to cover that.
Sure, absolutely. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Give me 1 second. I'll stop the share here. Right. And then let me know whenever you guys can see again.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. All right. So again, this is the standard looking, understanding, making view that you guys just saw when we started talking through. So methods of looking, that we can go into each one of these items and just kind of give you a good understanding about what each one of these are, so that hopefully you can use them in your breakout sessions whenever we let you guys apply what is design thinking. All right. And then Anne and Lydia, if you guys want to cover any of this too, let me know. I'm happy to let you guys walk through this. But in terms of methods of looking, right? So we mentioned before that some of the fundamentals of design thinking is stepping back and understanding. That's why the diagram was kind of separated in these 3 phases. Like you step back and you look at the problem, then you start, trying to like understand the problem a little bit more, and then you start like building the solution to the problem. So diving right into looking, we have what's on your radar. So this is an exercise when people just plot items in terms of like personal significance. So you can see that there's this spider web matrix here where people can, get out their sticky notes again and their Sharpies and start labeling things that are, primarily important to them, so something that might be secondary or tertiary. And you can just, again, start trying to understand like the values of an individual. This pairs really well with the persona mapping because, people who are likely in the same group or clustered in the same interest areas, they probably have, similar items that are important to them. So this helps us draw out some of those underlying values that you might not get in a one-to-one conversation. So that's an important practice that we can have. Interviewing is really my favorite way of understanding who we're talking to. Again, we have interactive activities that we can do, but you'll find normally whenever you're working with clients, people don't always want to pick up Sharpies and, play games with the marketing kids or, just like the creative kids. They want to get down to brass tacks, especially if they're like an operations officer in the C-suite or like a finance officer in the C-suite. So that's whenever we just sit down and have a conversation with them that, we, prepare questions for ahead of time where we just start talking to them about, what is their focus, and we let them tell us, verbally what their interests are. So I have, anytime somebody asks me what are skills that they can work on, I always say their dexterity and typing skills. Just because whenever you're in these interview sessions, it's always great to, have notes that are almost fully transcribed, as opposed to just like really rough sketches. But interviewing is a great way to just talk to people and get what's on their head. And then you can have some critiquing sessions. So forums for people to give and receive feedback. These are great sessions where you can identify key individuals to get in a group to describe, what they've been doing and why they've done it in the past. And then you can get a group of people to come in and ask, the key questions of, digging of why. Because then again, that helps you understand the mentality of, why certain decisions were made, and it helps you understand the mentality of the organization that got you to that point. So it's a good way to understand where an organization is and why they're there, as opposed to, necessarily just where they want to go in the future. Because oftentimes you'll find that history repeats itself. And if people made organizational decisions in the past a certain way, then they're probably going to make decisions like that in the future. So that's always a great way to understand that fundamental. In terms of understanding, again, the persona profile that I mentioned before, where you're trying to summarize the individual's mindset, needs, goals of, the stakeholders that are going to be involved in your process. So I know that I've talked about that one a little bit, so I won't go into too much depth on that. But the important part is that you are that once you create that profile, that you create that one-page summary sheet, so that in a physical world where everybody's together, you can tape that paper of who's Katie the soccer mom up on the wall, and you can constantly revisit who she is and make decisions based off of that persona. Yeah, Anne, do you want to cover journey mapping?
Sure, yeah. So journey mapping is basically a more, I think, physical way. It's a way of mapping a person's journey through a set of circumstances or tasks. So it's kind of taking that persona profile, but then creating it more into a flow, or like a timeline, or the different journey or tasks that they might be doing. So Katie the soccer mom, I would think her journey, so select an experience and document and focus on a few key tasks. So her role as a mom, her role as a soccer mom, even, it could be taking the kids to practice, picking up snacks for after practice, bringing the kids, juice boxes or granola bars or whatever. So documenting that specific journey. So it's a little bit more, I would say, a little bit more focused on what those tasks or actions are that she's completing. So you'll decide on which individual or their person to represent, and then listing the people, places, things that they encounter. So this would be, her kids, or maybe friends, or if she's also involved in like the PTA, or, any other things at school, that kind of thing. So it's a little bit more, it's expanding on just the persona, and it's expanding their responsibilities a little bit, and then documenting their experience in a format. So either a flow chart, a map, or a timeline, a process flow. And then you're going to focus in on the critical points or the key points in their journey that they accomplish.
Yeah, no, that's a great overview. Let's see. Oh, and then I see that you mentioned that we have about 2 more minutes until we get into the breakout rooms, and we're at that 2 minutes. So again, we can send this out after the call, so you guys can get a little bit more insight into, what round robin exercises are, alternative words, storyboarding, all of that fun stuff. And hopefully you guys can integrate this in your day-to-day.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for participating so far. Honestly, the next part is probably my favorite in terms of this design thinking event. Just really quickly, I did post in the chat the feedback form. So if you want to take a couple seconds later to complete that form, just copy and paste the link somewhere so you have it handy. And Nadine, if you want to send everybody to their breakout rooms, I think that would be good.
Okay, I will go ahead and open up all the rooms.
Thank you.
And each of the panelists should have their own breakout room.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Gotcha. And then do we have Shanoka on the call? Are her students going to have a breakout?
I don't see her on the call yet.
Okay. Should we temporarily reroute her students?
Yes.
And I have it set up so that everyone can choose their own breakout rooms.
Cool. Looks like everybody's starting to filter into some of them. Nadine, I'm also monitoring the breakout room. So if any one of them seems to be slightly lopsided, I'll probably just reroute a couple of the students to a different room.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I see that Anna doesn't have anyone in hers, so we could.
Just going to assign.
Yeah, I'll assign. Yep, Nelson just assigned you. And then we have in the waiting room.
Who that is calling in.
Hi, to the person who just joined the meeting. We're currently going into breakout rooms right now. So I can assign them.
Nadine, it looks like you might want to send them to Lydia's room.
Lydia's, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool. And then I don't know if we need to continue recording from this point for the main room.
Okay, I can pause it and then restart because we'll be heading back to the main room after the breakout sessions. Is that right?
No, I'm just going to have everybody dismiss from the breakout sessions.
Oh, okay. So I can go ahead and stop it then.
Cool. And then Nadine, feel free to